There are two verses of scriptures that are especially appropriate to us today. The first is found in Deuteronomy. It reads, "Ask about the former days. Take heed this day that the Lord is God." The second is the first verse of the 127th Psalm. It reads, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." Today we look back at 150 years history of this remarkable church. We are indeed asking about the former days. And when we do, the verse from the Psalms becomes especially meaningful to us. For the Lord has indeed built this house, and all the people that have devoted their lives to it have not labored in vain. By our standards, 150 years is a very long time, several lifetimes. It's almost more than 6 generations. By God's standards, though, 1838, when this church was born, was little more than just a few minutes ago.
How did it all begin? Well, how does anything begin? There was an idea, inspired and guided by God. That idea was shared with others, and things began to happen. Things that are happening still.
The year was 1838. It was the month of May, and springtime in Mississippi was green and lush as usual. 7 people met on a balmy day in May in the home of Major George Work, and something very special was begun. All of them were Baptists. One, in fact, was a Baptist minister, Reverend L.B. Holloway. They had been meeting every Sunday in the State House with other Protestant Christians, but they felt a need to form their own group, their own Baptist group.
There were just 529 people in all of Jackson at that time. Still, there were signs of progress. A Capitol building was under construction up on State Street, and there was talk of mansion for the governor. The legislature had set aside land for churches, and the little group raised $50 to purchase a lot at the southeast corner of Yazoo and West Streets.
$50. It was a lot of money back then.
The church building wasn't completed until 1845, but it was well built. It still stands today across from Central High School and Smith Park. During its lifetime, this building has housed congregations of 4 different denominations, an apartment building, and an insurance company.
Sunday school was organized before the new building was completed, and the little group persevered by meeting in homes. Times weren't easy. Records show that the Baptist State Association helped the struggling congregation in Jackson for several years by allocating $100 per year. Box suppers were prepared and sold by church members as a fundraising effort.
Strides were being made in Jackson. The state capitol building was first used in 1839, and Governor's Mansion was completed in 1842. By 1850, there were nearly 2,000 people in Jackson. That was the year the State Baptist Convention met for the first time at First Baptist Church, a practice which is now tradition. By 1854, the membership of the church numbered 344, of whom 250 were black.
In the late 1850s, a Ladies' Aid Society was formed at the church, and the women of First Baptist Church were recognized by the members of the association for their leadership and contribution to church service. By 1860, the prospects for the church were the brightest in its brief history.
But then came the war.
Civil War years were devastating to the city and to the church. Federal troops occupied the city on 3 different occasions. Each time, the church was used as a federal hospital. Between occupations, it was used as a hospital for Confederate soldiers.
In May of 1865, when the church should have been celebrating its 27th anniversary, it was trying instead to resume services, which had been discontinued for several months. It wasn't easy. Following the ravages of war, membership had dropped to just 46. During those bleak years, a few glimmers of hope and encouragement emerged. One came about because of a problem. Members of the church who lived west of Town Creek were frequently unable to attend because of flooding conditions. So, a Sabbath school was organized west of the creek in 1866. That was a forerunner of what would later be known as Calvary Baptist Church.
Conditions improved somewhat by 1870, as noted in the church report to the association. This was the first year that Jackson was able to support a minister for full-time work. Membership had grown to 59, and the church contributed a total of $27 for associational purposes.
By 1871, the church reported a library of 400 volumes, and by 1877, the membership reached 128. After the catastrophic yellow fever epidemic that year, the number plummeted to 87. Funds available for local expenditure amounted to $634, with the mission gift being $95.
Then God sent someone special. His name was Henry Sproul's. In 1880, when he came to the church as pastor, he was a 36-year-old Confederate Army veteran from a prominent Mississippi family.
His preaching was dynamic, his service to the community was tireless, and his vision for the Lord was exceptional.
During these years, the roles and responsibilities of women in the church increased. In 1880, one of the few ladies' missionary societies in the state was formed in this church. In 1888, this group joined in organizing a Women's Missionary Union. That same year, a Live Moon Christmas offering was introduced to aid foreign missions.
The church and its outreach continued to expand and prosper. Soon the building that was constructed in the church's pioneer days was inadequate for needs of the congregation a half-century later. Under Reverend Sproul's leadership, a new church building was envisioned.
After much prayer and deliberation, the church eventually agreed to construct a new building on the northwest corner of Capitol and President Streets. The cost was a whopping $25,000. But for that price, the structure had an auditorium that seated 670, 3 Sunday school classrooms, 3 mission rooms, and rooms for some state nominational offices.
As Sproul's dream neared reality, impaired health caused him to resign the pastorate. The Sproul's ministry ended on Christmas Day, 1898. The church voted to dedicate the north window of the main auditorium as a memorial to him. The Sproul's widow had been carefully moved from every church site since then, and has already been relocated to a place of prominence in the new church building that is presently under construction.
As First Baptist Church ushered in the 20th century, the congregation called Dr. W.F. Yarborough to serve as pastor. But when the new church was dedicated in 1901, Henry Sproul was requested to deliver a sermon of dedication. Sproul gladly filled the pulpit once more as First Baptist Church expressed gratitude to God and entered a new era of ministry in the Jackson community.
Jackson was growing by leaps and bounds. A new Capitol building was under construction. New rail lines connected the state to the nation, and population of the city was nearly 8,000. The church had membership of 375 in the year 1900, which meant that approximately 1 in every 21 citizens of Jackson was a member of First Baptist Church. Dr. Yarborough served 10 years until 1909. During that time, church membership more than doubled to 739. Total giving quadrupled to nearly $9,000. By the time Dr. Yarborough's tenure ended, First Baptist was the largest church in the state.
First Baptist pastor for the second decade of the century was William Archer Borum. During these years, the church experienced phenomenal growth, as did the city.
Contemporary conveniences came to First Baptist as they kept in step with the times. A furnace was installed to heat the church at a cost of $350, and the baptistry was heated for the first time. In 1915, the church realized another first. The budget was finally balanced, which may be attributed to an action of the deacons. They authorized publication of the church roll and listed contribution of each member. The largest single contributor gave $156 that year.
Modern city sophistication was surfacing throughout Jackson. Capitol Street was paved and streetlights installed. Borum served the church until 1917, when Dr. W.A. Hewitt was called. The Hewitt years were truly blessed. 348 members were added to the church during his first year, an increase of more than 35%.
Despite the intervention of a world war in which many were served, growth continued.
The horse and buggies were put to pasture. In 1918, the pastor was presented with a horseless carriage, a shiny new Model T. Also, the church was concerned about the heavy workload being handled by the pastor and provided him with an assistant, the first full-time staff person.
And once again, the church faced the same concerns. Growth had demonstrated the need for larger quarters. A building committee was formed and deliberation began, but there were some obstacles to be overcome.
One hindrance was a massive campaign being waged at that time by the Southern Baptist Convention to raise $75 million over a 5-year period. First Baptist was assigned a goal of $75,000 for the campaign and actually gave $50,000. The enormity of that gift can be better understood by the fact that the entire church budget for 1919 was only $11,000.
The need for a larger facility persisted. In 1923, a site was chosen on North President Street, opposite the state capitol, one of the most strategic and unique locations of any church in the nation.
Some members questioned the wisdom of moving from downtown to what was then considered a remote area, but the church accepted the recommendation and purchased the property for $38,000. The enormity of the faith and commitment required to undertake a $500,000 building program is better understood when measured by the fact that the church had never given more than $15,000 for all causes combined in one calendar year.
The cornerstone for the new building was laid in April 1924. At that time, the church had fewer than 2,000 total members. Speaking at the ceremony and noting that the building had started in Depression years with no funds subscribed, Dr. Hewitt said, "God would bless any people who had the faith to step forward at a time like that. I'd rather begin building without money than with money, for if we start without money, we are willing to give God the credit."
During these unprecedented years of expansion, financial pressures, and construction, the people of the church adjusted to whatever inconveniences arose, while their faith and enthusiasm mounted. The accomplishments at First Baptist Church bore a vivid testimony to the entire local community and state. Brought about through dedication and sacrifice, they reflected the congregation's unwavering determination to furnish a bold witness for God.
With the outbreak of World War II, another trying period for the church ensued. An honor roll was erected listing the 200 members of the church in the armed forces, including 6 deacons.
The internal attentions of the church were focused on the Sunday school program as it became a more integral part of worship. The Baptist Young People's Union was also quite popular, and the Women's Missionary Union was responsible for a number of mission education organizations, like Sunbeams, Royal Ambassadors, and Girls Auxiliary. Dr. Hewitt resigned as pastor in late 1945. During his pastorate, the church had grown from 800 members to 4,500. The budget from less than $10,000 to more than $100,000. Under Dr. Hewitt's leadership, the church became extremely mission-minded and launched several new churches in the area. Hewitt remained lifelong members of the church he had so capably led.
Dr. Douglas Hudgens was called to pastorate in 1946 from the First Baptist Church of Houston, Texas. During his ministry, the church incorporated the broadcast media into its program of outreach. In 1948, morning worship service was heard for the first time on radio. In 1955, it was necessary to begin a second morning service. And in 1956, the television ministry was added.
Spiritual and physical growth wasn't all at the downtown location. In 1950, Broadmoor Baptist Church was begun as a mission of First Baptist and was constituted as church in 1953. Soon after, First Baptist organized another mission church now known as Ridgecrest Baptist Church. First Baptist played a major role in the inception of other churches as well. They include Woodland Hills, Calvary Baptist, Griffith Memorial, Crestwood Baptist, Parkway, and Oak Forest. Many other churches have also received a helping hand from First Baptist.
To meet the many new challenges and needs, the church staff was enlarged. Hundreds of volunteers from throughout the congregation filled the organizational leadership positions as the membership continued to give dedicated and devoted attention to the work and witness of the church.
Growth escalated, and in 1955, a 4-story educational building, a 2-story chapel, and full base were occupied. In 1956, when Dr. Hudgens had been at the church for 10 years, it was noted that 4,000 new members had been received during his ministry. When he retired in 1969 to begin work with the state convention, Dr. Hudgens and his family maintained their active interest and membership in First Baptist.
A number of innovative changes occurred in 1969 while the church was without a pastor. Part of the main church building was renovated as a youth wing. The church began publishing its own bulletin in conjunction with Baptist Record. Numerous prayer groups were formed to support the church and pulpit committee. And a Tuesday men's Bible study was begun. The power of prayer, always a moving force among God's people, was especially meaningful during the church's life at this time.
In 1969, the pulpit committee carefully considered more than 100 candidates and finally recommended Larry Rorman, who began his ministry in November of that year.
Rorman was especially concerned about evangelism, and a minister of evangelism was added to the staff to give additional impetus to the church's efforts. More property and facilities were acquired, including the former YMCA building, which was renovated as Family Life Center.
In 1970, a multi-talented young man named Larry Black was called as Minister of Music. He organized and developed the music department into various choirs and musical groups and made significant improvements in music facilities and activities.
After more than 3 years of dramatic membership gain, including one Sunday when there were 124 additions to the church, Rorman resigned pastorate in August 1973.
Countless hours of intense prayer, consultation, travel, and search led the pulpit committee to Dallas, Texas, and to Franklin Pollard. He began his initial pastorate, in January 1974.
Once again, the church realized dramatic growth. The television ministry was bolstered with new equipment and broadcast facilities. The membership count was nearly 6,000. First Baptist Boy Scout Troop 8 was recognized as one of the nation's outstanding developers of character in young men. Pollard was recognized as one of the most outstanding preachers in the nation, and was adly sought for pulpit and religious emphasis appearances all across the country. The Southern Baptist Convention selected him for both the Baptist Hour weekly radio program and a new television feature, At Home with the Bible. Two mainstays of the church senior staff came during these years: Siler Batson, associate pastor, and Ken Lundquist, business administrator.
When Pollard left for pastorate in Texas and later the presidency of the San Francisco Golden Gate Seminary, Earl Craig was called as pastor. It soon became necessary for Craig to conduct 3 morning church services to accommodate all worshipers wishing to attend. Bill Gambrell came to serve as Minister of Education, and under his tutelage, enrollment in the 3 Sunday schools climbed to all-time record numbers. The educational ministry once again outgrew its space. The need for nursery facilities became urgent, and it was recognized that no pastor could continue under the burden of 3 morning services indefinitely.
So in 1985, the church took a bold step, approving a tremendous expansion program for educational facilities and doubling the size of the sanctuary for church worship. Selecting a slogan, "For such times this," the congregation pledged more than $14 million for instruction. A contract for $22 million was arranged, and the building project was underway.
When Dr. Craig resigned the pastorate, the church and its pulpit committee turned with one accord to its former pastor, Frank Pollard. Dr. Pollard felt God's call to return to the pulpit ministry and returned as pastor in 1986.
His ministry and the entire church had been greatly blessed by the grace and benevolence of God's divine presence. And now, in 1988, as we faithfully anticipate our responsibilities in the days ahead, it's appropriate to pause and look at our past. More importantly, we must set our sights for the future.
In 150 years, the lives of many have been enriched by this church, and many have had the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others through this church. Buildings have served an integral purpose as they provided facilities for the study of God's Word, and their physical presence makes a resolute statement of commitment from God's people.
Ministers have served here who were attuned to the call of Christ. Thousands of First Baptist men and women, young people and children have worked and prayed in countless positions of responsibility. Many have been called from this membership to full-time service as ministers and missionaries. The church and its people have made ever-increasing contributions of time and offerings to mission endeavors in the city, the nation, and around the world, playing a strong leadership role in mission work of Southern Baptists. And now, the church stands steadfast in its observance of God's leadership for the future, to grow and to prosper as He sees fit, always to fulfill its purpose as a gathering place and spiritual fortress for a stalwart body of believers, and for this community, a beacon for those who seek knowledge of Jesus Christ.
In Isaiah 43:18-19, the Lord says, "Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth."
So what's the theme of the story of one church? It surely isn't size, although that's considerable. Church grew from just 7 persons 150 years ago to more than 8,000 today. But that's not the story of this church.
Neither is it finance or buildings or even remarkable leadership. All those are important and help the church fulfill its role. But the story of this church, theme throughout its entire 150-year history, is much more.
It's purely and simply the work of God in the community. That's the only greatness this church can claim, that we're privileged to be God's instrument in our community.
And what about the future? The future of this church is not tied to its massive building program, as impressive as that might be. The future of this church is not tied to the talents of its pastors or its members, as wonderful as they might be.
The future of this church is tied fully, completely, without question to one thing, the will of God in Christ.
And our responsibility is clear. We have to be wise enough to know God's will. We have to be brave enough to attempt it. We have to be dependent enough on His Holy Spirit to achieve it. And we have to pray enough to claim it.
The Apostle Paul said that his only glory was in the cross of Christ. That is, must remain our only glory.
Paul also said that he continued to press toward the mark, the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. That is, and must remain, our challenge.
Happy birthday, First Baptist Church Jackson. God's prevailing church.